I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Detrick. Jordan Redaelli is safely on vacation. And Andrew Kuo takes zero, nada, nunca, never a day off.
Also, safe days off. I'm feeling great. Pacing myself. We're just in the beginning of this thing. I feel good. How do you feel, Ben?
I feel fine. It's exciting. This anxious moment, this cultural, what's the word we're looking for here? This tapestry of
I did not expect that word, but I love it. I love it.
This tapestry of stress and loneliness and horniness. You know, this real just roiling bulb.
Too much.
Of
Too much information.
No, I'm great. This has infested my dreams.
How so?
How about you? Have you had any crazy dreams?
I am prone to nightmares, and stress dreams. So I try to live my life like I don't watch anything scary on TV because I'm a grown man who still has nightmares about Pet Sematary 5. But I have your standard anxiety dreams, and they take forms of stupid stuff. I have this reoccurring dream where I'm walking around New York City without shoes on, and I'm trying desperately to get shoes and I can't find them. Is that weird?
I don't think it's weird. I don't think any dreams are particularly weird.
Nice.
But no, I'm not inordinately stressed at all because, as we've described before, our daily routines are not that different from what they are right now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I do
personal,
think,
like me and you work at home, you mean?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't feel more stressed than normal. It's actually more stressful when you leave the house because you start getting really paranoid about what you're touching. We discussed this over the last X amount of episodes. But I did have a really annoying dream.
What's that? Talk to me.
Oh, it was horrifying.
Lay on my black leather court.
All right, listen up, listeners. This is terrifying, and if it's gonna really bother you, be careful.
Yeah, maybe be careful who you listen.
Yeah. So I was racing to catch a flight in my dream, charging through a labyrinthine airport, much like JFK when you're at one of those ones that's all the way at the end and you have to keep going down the little walking paths, then stairs, and you're and I was racing to catch this flight. And it was endless. Corridors, past people are in your way, you have to shove past them. And my luggage was already gone. It was like a connecting flight. I don't know where to where or anything like that. I get to the gate. They're like, sorry, the doors have closed. And I'm like, no! And I wake up. The worst dream ever, man.
That's annoying. I
didn't even get to die. There was nothing remotely memorable. I wake up in the morning exhausted. I just missed a plane. It was the worst nightmare I've ever had.
You had a centrist ass dream, man. It was in the middle of scary, in the middle of stressful, but none of those things.
No, it wasn't scary. It was just minor stress. And then waking up being I feel as if I just missed a plane.
That sucks.
Terrible. I'm sorry to even share that with you listeners, that you had to be subjected to the brutality of what was going through my head the other night.
It might be a self-care dream. In these times, you don't want to get on that flight. You'd be oh, the universe is on my side.
I don't know. It's probably more I'm trying to get out of here and I can't.
Trump just called this thing an act of God. Or he said, I correct myself. He said, some say this is an act of God. How do you feel about that?
I don't even know what that
dream
means.
Related. Things that are out of our hands, out of our power.
Was Trump talking about my dream?
Could be.
Well, he's calling it an act of God, but he's also called it an act of the Chinese.
That's right.
So what is he really getting at?
Is he trying to take down God? Is he trying to knock
Or is
God
he
down a
saying
peg?
that the Asian alliance are,
Biblical?
they are like on Mount Parnassus? How are you feeling about this apparent, I guess, wave of anti-Chinese sentiment, including people getting like yelled at and harassed and insulted on the streets of this city?
It's happening in New York. I think even Cuomo said it in a press conference or maybe an interview yesterday. There's been incidents, like hate crime incidents in New York against Chinese people. Trump has definitely pushed the word Chinese virus onto our zeitgeist, one of my favorite words. But, you know, we talked about it briefly a few episodes ago, myself being Chinese, like American Chinese. I was born here. But I accept the terms of living in America, looking the way I do. And those terms may not be my favorite terms, but I've accepted them. But when Trump goes out there and tries to frame things this way, I just feel like it's mean and reckless. And there's so many dumb people out there who have never met, that don't have Chinese friends or don't have friends that don't look like them. Maybe. I don't know. I'm guessing. But to just follow blindly into that, I think, is understandable. And when I say I accept these terms, what we're going through is so scary that it turning into anger and that anger turning into blame is natural.
For sure.
Yeah, I don't blame anybody who's doing this, but I am disappointed.
When we discussed this the other day, I suggested that viewing coronavirus, the novel coronavirus, as a wartime experience could be helpful. And that viewing it as an unseen enemy that we need to band together to defeat might be the kind of rhetoric that could spark cretins into action. The kind of people who were scoffing at this being a hoax a week ago and now being like, okay, forget the whole hoax thing. We're at war. And being like, okay, cool. We have to do our patriotic duty by like eating Doritos on the couch and panic buying toilet paper. But whenever we have a war, to your point exactly, there's always someone who is scapegoated. You know, after 9/11, you had Sikh cab drivers who were nothing to do with any of this, religion-wise or other, were getting assaulted in New York City. And in World War I, World War II, you had German Americans being attacked. You had Japanese Americans being attacked. So it is not a surprise that Chinese people are being targeted for abuse. And that rhetoric that Trump is using obviously plays a huge role in that. I mean, it was trending on Twitter today. China, like, virus. Like, they are intentionally trying to do that.
I mean, a month and a half ago in better times, we talked about this virus as soon as it started, and our discussion was framed about race and what kind of hysteria and what kind of framing China would have because of a really unique pandemic or a virus that was starting off. And my position hasn't quite changed. I sometimes watch Fox News for a couple of hours a night as I'm doing stuff just to hear like how people are thinking who I don't agree with. And a lot of last night was, what are we going to do and can we blame the Chinese? And people are, you know, the head of Biden's campaign was on there and they're like, why are we talking about this? Don't do that. We don't have to call it the Chinese virus. And the hosts were like, but isn't it just a word and didn't it start in China? What's the problem? It's like, well, if it's just a word, then switch it. It's like, no, but this is an accurate word. And it got me thinking about where we actually care about authenticity and origination is so subjective because, like, I don't know. We all try to better ourselves and change the framework of like things that exist, and I don't know where there's like truth in a barbecue menu or a Chinese menu or a Mexican menu. People love to talk about authenticity in food, and it's something we always discuss. Like, as soon as we let go of that, I think our lives all get better, and as soon as we don't really care about the authenticity of this origination of this virus, we care about a scapegoat.
Well, when you find yourself arguing that we need the accuracy of China, we need that in there, then you're also arguing that it should be known for that.
Yeah.
Because to your point, it's not just a word anymore. Like, the frantic need for accuracy here is fully freighted with xenophobia and with an attempt to blame China. Mm-hmm. Now, I believe you can call it whatever you want. We can call it coronavirus,
to a degree.
Novel coronavirus,
Yeah.
COVID-19, whatever. I'm going to ask this
The Rona.
to you, and this is not a tactful question. I will acknowledge that.
I love these kind of questions.
Bird flu, SARS, COVID-19. Could China be doing a better job?
1,000 zillion %.
I'm not blaming China, but could they do a better job here?
It's a different system over there. Remember, when we say China, we're talking about like billions and billions of unorganized people, right? Like, and China's a wonderful place with like the most modern cities, but there's a lot of people going on, and I mean, there's a lot of people who live there, who live in a culture of, like, for lack of a better word, like oppression for generations, right? Like, we've seen this for almost a century. The way life is in China is different than the way the life is here. And there was reports that there were 0 cases of new virus infections. 0 cases of the coronavirus, new cases today in China. I don't believe it. Like, as a lesson, like, China is a very squirrely, strange place, and they live life in a different way. And viruses do start there, but there was viruses that started in South America. I believe MERS started in the Middle East. Zika started maybe in South America. I'd be getting this wrong, obviously. I'm not an expert in this.
The Spanish influenza, by all accounts, started in the United States, despite the fact that it was saddled with an Iberian name.
Yeah. It's just unfortunate that during this time we have the least tactful and probably dimmest leader we've ever had. I'm not a presidential historian, but I think he is the wrong person in this situation, and this makes total sense because he just doesn't want the blame.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, again, I am not advocating that we point the finger at China. I am just suggesting that out of some of these pandemics that have emerged, they came from a place that includes 20% of the population. So they are more likely to have these things come from there because they have so many people.
Yeah.
But still, like, maybe their government, as well as they have done with isolating it now, if they weren't so intent on hiding it, could have really isolated this in a better way. But again, that's a conversation for people who really know what they're talking about, and I never know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. Like, me neither. And, a lot of, you read about a lot of cities there. I believe, I forgot what it's called, but there's a city that recycles a lot of technology, like byproducts, phones. They salvage precious metals and resell them to the tech market to make new goods. And that city is very dark and polluted and dangerous to live in, but they're trying to just make ends meet. And this is a global socioeconomic discussion that I'm not equipped to have, but the desperation on the level we see in certain places in the world, like, I can commiserate with. And when bad things happen because of that desperation, whether it be a virus or civil war or something truly awful, I'm like, right. There was no infrastructure there to protect itself from that.
And of course, even if we could blame the Chinese government and say, you did this wrong, you should have done it in a way that would have kept this away from our shores
Yeah.
on some, we are not part of the world type of ideology.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like we've done a good job. It's not like Italy did a good job.
France.
And even if you want to blame China, you can't be mad at Chinese people. Like, they didn't do it. You can't be mad at your neighbor. And it's
or
that
you
kind
could
of
be, right? Like, this is how, Gen X tranquility, this is the cookies thing. Like, we have to get there because, like, I always joke every time I get a little stress about being the way I look or looking the way I look. And it happens more or less than you probably think. But I always respond at this point, like, but you don't even know me. And at first they're always taken aback because I don't have a Chinese accent. And then I'm like, I love sports as much as you. And I always say, like, when I was little, my first interest in sports was I needed to find a way to talk to people who didn't look like me. And I was attracted to sports anyway. I really enjoyed basketball. But I was like, this is a way for me to relate to these people that I need friends or else I'm dead in the water. And if I can relate to somebody on that level, I have an in. And I made a lot of friends through sports. And so when somebody rolls up to me and assumes I'm a certain way, they're always taken aback. And I'm like, that's even doubly annoying. I'm just like, I always say this word. I always joke. I'm always like, come on, man. And they're like, whoa, not only do you not have a Chinese accent, you sound like you're from Long Island.
And now you're telling me to stare at Randall's.
Yes.
I don't understand that.
You probably don't even believe in losses. Like, you probably care about wins, don't you? You think Dolan's the problem. And they're like, now they hate me for that take. But,
well, in other political news, the Democratic primary has clearly taken the back burner in terms of being the national story of the day, but it has still continued apace. Mm-hmm. Bernie has fallen further behind and now is in really bad shape. Like, he could technically win still because there are votes to be had, but he is in very, very tough shape.
He needs to win 70% of the rest of the votes to get enough delegates. I believe it's delegates. But he's only polling at 35. So it's very improbable.
So Tulsi dropped out. She was one of the few people who is still left in the race besides those two older gentlemen. And she endorsed Biden. So now there's been calls for Bernie to drop out. In your opinion, should he be dropping out now?
I don't care about that. I don't really engage in the discussion of where votes are going. I think everyone should vote however the hell they want to vote. Not being like, a vote for this person is a vote for Trump. I'm like, no, it's not. It's a vote for that person. Everyone has their freedom of expression that way. Probably the most important freedom of expression. But no, I don't think he should drop out. But now we know why these people all gravitated towards Biden because of math, right? Like, this was going to happen like dominoes. So their instinct to unite the party is fine with me too.
You made a good point several times on the issue of comparing politics to sports in the way that if your team loses, you're salty. Maybe not for years, but for a little while. And you'll blame the refs. You'll blame the cruel hand of fate.
The
Just
Chinese
an unlucky
people in
bounce.
the front row. Yeah.
You'll blame the nearest Asian.
Yeah.
But that's how we process losses. There's a scapegoat. It was the coach who did it. Fire Brett Braun. He did this. It was his fault that Tobias Harris missed all those shots. Or maybe it was Tobias Harris's fault. Or the refs. The refs blew it. Or Kawhi Leonard just got lucky and the ball bounced in. There's all these ways that you can process a loss. So coming from that perspective, it's true that fans of Bernie, myself included,
Respect.
are going to pick at those things. Mm-hmm. We're going to say, that wasn't fair, that wasn't right. It would have been different in this regard. Acknowledging this, that is certainly the case. I will also say, however, it is very difficult for you to convince me, and I mean the royal you, not you, Andrew Kuo, that Joe Biden is a legitimate winner of the Democratic primary. And that's from my opinion, which I acknowledge is biased. It's still in a place of being processed. I do not view Biden as a legitimate winner of the Democratic primary at all. And I think I speak for many other people who have the same belief systems that I do. Biden feels completely fraudulent in a way that like Hillary Clinton did not. And I don't know how this will affect things going further, but I suspect we will see a serious hemorrhaging of support and enthusiasm from young people for Joe Biden, even in a way that Hillary Clinton did not experience.
It's possible, for sure. I respectfully disagree and say he is probably the most legitimate in a candidate for the Democratic National Committee, because it just feels like they wanted him from day one. And to me, it's just like, oh, this.
Well, who is they?
The Democratic National Committee.
Oh, for sure. I'm not in agreement with that. I don't disagree with that in the least.
Yeah. So I was just like, who could beat this guy that they clearly are just like putting on the fast track? He's Billy Joel at the Garden, man. Like, they just love him. He feels like James Dolan feels like he belongs in the building. He's one of theirs, and I think it was up to somebody to convince us that the DNC didn't have its best intentions in mind. And politics sucks, and politics is not a game. It's a lot of maneuvering, and it's not like ball don't lie stuff. Ball always lies in politics.
Right. So I'm not disagreeing with how the DNC went about doing this in terms of actively pushing Biden and insisting on Biden being the candidate. That's certainly what happened. I just can't view it as legitimate. And I know what you're saying. Like, he is legitimate because he's their guy and he has these votes. And I understand that. Mm-hmm. I cannot look at this process and come away feeling like, you know, Bernie did a good job. He did what he could. He just wasn't good enough, because Biden is such a bad candidate who has no enthusiasm, no ideas. He had no money. He had no ground game, and was just shoveled into our face by the DNC. I can't view him as like a legitimate victor out of this primary. I can't do it.
It's so funny. If we go down the chain, as a Yang supporter like myself, I'm like, Biden and Bernie are so illegitimate. They're just lifelong senators. Like, can we get rid of these lifelong politicians and get some fresh ideas in here? I'm so tired of Bernie. He's been saying the same thing for 40 years. Andrew Yang, on the other hand, is the answer. You know, like, it keeps on going. And then someone would be like, but Andrew Yang is establishment because he's like a businessman. Could we get Marianne Williamson in there? You know, it's like, it just keeps on going.
And I understand that people who liked Kamala Harris are like, she got a raw deal. Warren voters.
Oh, I kind of like Kamala Harris.
She's got a
too.
raw deal despite being a backstabber. I just mean, everyone whose candidate lost feels a certain way. I get that, and I fully acknowledge it.
I mean, Bernie, you know, let's not forget, he's not a Democrat, but he's also no spring Senate chicken, right? Like, he's been around. Everyone says he's been steadfast in his policies for 40 years. I'm like, he's been in politics for 40 years? Like, that sounds like a wasted life. I don't know. I'm being cynical. Of course, it's a great life, but like, this is his calling, and he's stuck in one gear, and I love that because that gear gets you across the finish line. But I don't know. I was looking for something different from both these guys, to be honest.
Someone wrote a little essay, and it had a great title, and it was, you know, here's how Biden can get the Bernie voter. And their, you know, nut graph was, he can't.
Wait, which graph?
Like the nut graph, which is like your thesis statement.
Which
It's
nuts?
like a writing term.
Which nuts?
Huh?
Which nuts?
What are you talking about?
These nuts!
You talking about these nuts?
I'm sorry. I apologize. This is serious.
But yes, the nut graph was.
I'm sorry. I've been at home for a long time. Okay.
Are you
ready.
you now governed by horny? Is that what's happening?
I'm like with a 5-year-old sense of humor.
So yes, the premise, just to avoid you losing your shit, was that Biden has already lost the Bernie voter, and like that ship has sailed. And I think that's kind of true. Bernie stood for a certain amount of values. The DNC just gave a middle finger to all of them and was like, no, we're going to take this rancid Skeletor and you're going to have to vote for him or we'll shame you. And it's like, sorry, dudes. Nope. And like, I think it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But I do feel like the Bernie voter at this point is like, don't drop out, run third party. Like the Democratic Party, in the way that they've responded to this crisis from Schumer and Pelosi, has been so underwhelming. And Biden being the figurehead of the future of the party is such a calamity and such a natural loser that I don't think you can look at the Democratic Party at this point and say, well, I'm one of them. I have faith in this organization. You look at them with scorn and total distrust. They have sold everyone out, every young person, every progressive, over and over and over. They are good cops.
I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly on, I think Bernie should stay in the race. He should do whatever the hell he wants to do. I don't share the same scorn for the Democratic Party because I hate politics, all politics, for the reasons you suggested. And, you know, there's a mathematic case to be said that maybe the difference between Biden and Trump, Biden presidency and a Trump presidency is the Bernie vote. But whatever, those are the rules of these games. And if Bernie voters don't switch to Biden, more power to you guys. Respect. Like, it's your right.
I've just never felt this level of disgust and hatred for the DNC today that I did in the past. I've never felt that way. And I went out and canvassed for John Kerry. I worked for, the campaigns of volunteering for campaigns for moderate Democrats growing up.
I tried to help Howard Dean's come. I was a downtown for Diener.
I was downtown for democracy too. Yeah. And I have been like a good soldier for my entire life for the Democratic Party. Like walk in, vote for all of them. Just down the thing. I have never hated them and despised Tom Perez, Hillary Clinton, the entire power structure of the DNC with the fury of 1,000 suns. And that's how I feel right now. Like I fucking hate them.
In 2016, I was at a point in my life before Trump, like 2015, let's say, when all the Republican candidates were vying for that nomination. I was at the point in my life where I had gone through some adult things and I was coming out of them, and adult things being like death and the changing of like all your framework and all that stuff. And I told myself that I would listen to Republicans and maybe like think harder about how I feel about politics and not just vote for, like you said, every Democrat that is up there. I wanted to hear everyone. And for the first time in my life, I was open to voting for a Republican if I thought that Republican like caught my imagination. None did. It didn't happen. And it was
Black-pilled Kuo votes straight Democratic.
Yes. And like it was kind of a sad moment in that like I was ready for a new idea and I was ready to kind of be a better person in my mind, and the opportunity wasn't there. Like I want to make lasagna but I have no sauce, I'm like I'm gonna have
your lack of sauce has been an enduring malady that you've suffered for years on end, going back to the Knicks shorts.
Oh, that was too much sauce. What are you talking about? You had me until the Knicks shorts. I was like, yes, no.
Like, no. That was the appropriate, perhaps even an overdose of the sauce.
Oh, I look good, man.
Yeah, I know. Dude, your sauce was ragu. It was Prego.
And it was like Michigan Wolverines length shorts. They were like at my knees, man. I felt good.
I formally apologize.
Thank you. I accept it.
You had a proper amount of sauce.
What, the Wallabies with no socks didn't convince you?
At this point, I am more irritated at the DNC than the Republicans because at least we get that they're criminals and they have no values and they're just repugnant pigs. Like we get that. We know that. Like that's who they are. They're
There's smart Republicans out there, though.
Yeah, right. There's a cartoon. There's a the mythical principled Republican dude. Come on.
I don't know. Like, Ezra Klein wrote a book about this. I'm not gonna read that book, but like, because I don't read books.
I was about to say.
I listened to his 2-hour podcast. I really, not to get into a conversation about like tribalism, but there's some smart people everywhere, and they're really interesting. That's all I'll say.
All right. My thing here,
Lakers fan over here.
My thing here is that I'm more disappointed by the Democratic Party because they're supposed to be on our side. That's what's disappointing. You're never mad about the transactions of the Boston Celtics.
When did you ever think that they were actually on your side, though?
I'm just saying in this two-party system, the ones
Take
that
the
are
red
closer
pill,
to
then.
you. Of course. I'm just saying if you're rooting for a team, you're more liable to be upset by their transactions because like this is supposed to be our team. Why are you bringing in Gerald Henderson? Like what's that about? You're trading up for Markelle Fultz? Come on. You're not mad that the Knicks drafted RJ.
Yeah, you do what you can do in these tough times, man.
Yeah, that's true. How are you getting through these tough times media-wise? Because we've covered every new HBO show that's come out in depth. Have you gone into the vaults at all, finding older stuff to watch?
I've been rewatching Ozark, which is an amazing show, and it feels exactly like The Outsider that just finished on HBO. It's like Jason Bateman. Everyone's seen it. It won some Golden Globes, I believe. It's a fantastic show, man, and I'm really happy to be there. Rewatch. I tried, as we said before, The Sopranos, but it didn't quite work. What about you? What are you watching?
Why did you choose Ozark? Because it's still probably fairly fresh in your memory, right?
Yeah. I chose it because I love the tone of it. The cinematography is great. I love the way people talk on it. So I like to have that vibe in the house, that Ozark vibe. And
I liked Ozark as well, but it reminded me a little of Breaking Bad, and that you had to understand that it was a comedy. And I remember reading one review for Ozark, and they're like, it's so unflinchingly dark. And I felt like that was how I misunderstood Breaking Bad when I had trouble getting into the series. Because you turn it on, you're like, it's a guy with cancer. It's a handicapped son. He's collapsing. Now he's getting into the very dark meth cooking trade. There are corpses being melted with lye falling through the roof. It was so unrelentingly dark that you had to finally come to the conclusion that this was a comic book, that this was all dark humor. And that happened in Breaking Bad when Walt throws that weird little grenade that he made in the lab and it blows up and he like walks away from you like, oh, this is a joke. The whole thing is a joke. And I felt once I understood that Ozark was humor, that it was Arrested Development, but with an accountant, then I kind of understood why it was great. And I really liked it once I sort of concluded that it was actually a comedy.
I don't really consider it a full comedy, but it has moments. Like Julia Garner won the award for, I guess, Best Supporting Actress for that show. She is hilarious. It's like every time she steps on, I believe there's one scene in the second season where Jason Bateman kind of smirks and they left the edit in because she is like so over the top incredible and amazing in her like trash talking, for lack of a better term, white trash, like point of view, or her character. It's funny in that regard, but I don't see it as, it's so funny. I don't see it as a comedy. I see it as like this way to describe an Arthur Miller thing. Like, I think it's a tragedy.
I thought The Accountant was a comedy too, though.
The Accountant was. Ben Affleck is awesome. He's our hero.
I view them very similarly in that way. It's like, okay, we're going to make a non-hero hero out of literally an accountant. Right. And they both had sort of that same premise. But Affleck was also a master assassin and like hand-to-hand fighter. Yeah. While the other dude in Ozark was literally a master accountant. And those scenes where he like starts shifting into accounting mode to like cook the books are just like,
That's funny stuff.
that's comedy.
I kind of try to shy away from making like comedy drama and drama comedy. You know how some comedians are so funny and the take is sometimes, oh, but what you see, like Eddie Murphy's talking about the human condition. I'm like, no, he's just trying to be hilarious. Don't do that. You know, like we cannot do that to great things. And when I see something like Ozark, I accept, or Breaking Bad is a better example. To me, it's not so much of a comedy that it is a tragedy. And I don't think they're trying to make it funny, but it is ironic. And all those things kind of blend together, right?
I mean, yes. It's like trying to say, okay, this guy is a point guard because he dribbles the ball and passes versus this guy scores in the paint. You know, and we're trying to divide up positions and be like, well, it's a comedy. This is a drama. I would not say that it should be filed in the Blockbuster video section as a comedy. I'm saying I interpreted it as a comedy, and that was kind of how I watched it and enjoyed it more once I realized that I wasn't supposed to take it that seriously, and it wasn't grim in the way that it immediately or initially seemed.
Yeah, and I guess a good example or topic would be like Better Call Saul. Have you seen that?
I watched the first season and part of the second. I thought it was pretty good, but I also found it exceptionally boring after a while.
I weirdly think it's like, not to rank bullshit, but like I think it's better than Breaking Bad. I found it to be so like kind of rich in a way that Breaking Bad wasn't. I thought the characters in Better Call Saul were like straight up heartbreaking with like a capital H. And I think that could be read as a comedy easier because like Bob Odenkirk is a comedian and he's been in comedies. He's a very serious guy, but it's like that trope on The Simpsons, like, oh, maybe the next one, oh, I lose again. And it's this funny like American story of some guy just losing over and over and trying to relitigate his losses into victories. And it was tragic and ironic, but it is never funny.
I kind of agree that Better Call Saul read as a comedy because of who was involved in it, and that he was a character mostly used for levity in Breaking Bad. Mm-hmm. But I would also agree that it was not played for laughs for the most part.
Yeah.
And I would not categorize it as a comedy either, even less so than Ozark. But again, this is all personal sort of interpretation of how you want to enjoy something.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I thought the characters in Better Call Saul did have a more emotional gravitas. And you did care more about them, and there was more depth than in Ozark.
I mean, the Michael McKean character in Better Call Saul, no spoilers, it's like a shut-in, ironically, but a master lawyer and older brother of, his name isn't Saul. That was my favorite thing. It's like, why do you call yourself Saul? Because it's Saul good. It was like so sad, you know. It's never good. But Michael McKean is this, I think, my favorite character in it, and he was in Spinal Tap and Laverne and Shirley. Like, this guy's kind of a slapstick comedian, and the character in this story is so sad and so manipulative and like cunning, and I just really love the show. So if you haven't seen it, like, that's a great way to pass like 2 days.
I've been getting into X-Files again.
Yes.
And I'm always sort of into X-Files. I don't go that long without watching a couple episodes, but that's really been my go-to lately.
Fucking phenomenal, man. What a great show. I have an X-Files tattoo.
Just like Vince Gilligan fanboys over here.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah. This is our whole personnel thing, right? Like, every time he does...
X-Files, Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad.
He's incredible. I love his aesthetic. And what's your favorite kind of X-Files episode? Because there's a couple.
I prefer the Monster of the Week episodes.
Yeah.
I like the standalones. I don't really care that much about the alien plot that rolls throughout it or the vast conspiracy. I never care. Yeah, I never cared about that kind of stuff. Yeah. And that's my problem with Westworld too. I don't care about your big picture conspiracy that you're pretending to unravel that goes nowhere. Yeah. Like, you're just doing this to take up space. I know it. You know it. We all know it.
See, I prefer
okay.
that. I prefer
See,
that narrative.
But some people love that shit.
Yeah, I like.
I
that.
don't care. Give me like the mummy that wakes up in the art gallery and
Yeah.
like starts, I don't know, eating the guards.
Yeah, and X Files is it's like super rewarding because you have the first run of that series, and then you have. Oh my God! Do you remember this era when it was like The Simpsons and then the X Files right after The Simpsons, and there was something in the middle, but I want to say Malcolm in the Middle, something, but it was like
did you have Living Color back then? I'm trying to even think what the timetable was.
I believe Living Color was before that because I don't know. Anyway, this is not important, but the X Files is rewarding because you have the first run of that series, and then you have the movies that were pretty great. I thought I believe you have 2 movies, and then you have the reboot of the series, which ends up being such a gracious gift to its fans because it was the monster of the week. Like I was like, oh, are they going to do the Cancer Man thing? Like a little bit, but we're going to give you Creature. You know,
those are my favorites because the tone of the show could shift so dramatically week by week that some would be very whimsical, funny, in black and white, an odd throwback into Titanic, and it could be, or a cruise ship, whatever it was. They were willing to jump around in a way that there was no connection between a prior episode and the one today, and it almost had that sense of like The Simpsons. That an episode happens and it's never referred to again. So they would do those, and then at the same time, you would have your alien abduction plot with Mulder and his sister, and Scully having things implanted in the back of her head.
Skinner,
the smoking guy. But I
Cancer
love the
Man.
ones where it would be a totally different mood, and you'd still have the same dynamics no matter what. Like Scully never, despite seeing all these unexplainable things, would never come over to the side of mystery. She would always stick to science, and I loved that element of static belief systems, where you could never convince her, despite the fact that she'd seen ghosts for the last 5 years, that like this time it wasn't science.
It was Spock and Kirk, right? It's like Simmons and Embiid. No, that's too much of a stretch. But it's just like that cool. We kind of figured out that like your brain processes things across hemispheres. It's not like creative and tactical, but I love that kind of story. So every time there's a duo in any story, they have to kind of bounce off each other in that way. Alfred and Batman, Batman and Robin, the Joker and Batman. I don't know why all of my examples were Batman, but of Mice and Men, right? It's the John Steinbeck thing.
Superman, Batman, Robin, Batman,
Bizarro Batman,
the Joker,
the Batmobile, Batman. But yeah, that's just easy, good storytelling. So like, if that is presented to me in a show, I'm just in, I'm hunkering down with my popcorn.
Kobe Bryant, Batman.
R.J. Barrett, Batman.
But yeah, that's been what I've been revisiting. So there's no good episodes to chat about. But
Are you going to the reboot?
No, I didn't like the reboot. I thought it was terrible.
Okay, there was a really funny part. I'm gonna butcher this, but there was like a comedian, like Flight of the Conchords. Their manager was in it. I think he's from New Zealand, and I
saw that one. That was probably the best of the new ones.
Oh my God, that line where he's like, I want to confess to a crime. It's like, well, what happened? And he's a cannibal or something, and he feeds off of like animals and humans. It's like, I want to confess to a crime. I committed murder. And they were like, well, what happened? He was like, well, I got in my car and went to a drive-thru. And it was like, how would you like your burger? He's like, bloody rare. I thought that was very, very funny. Being from New Zealand, I don't know. Memories of a more innocent time, Ben.
Speaking of this time, there was a Pitchfork article about the state of New York City nightlife, and the state being at current not good. And they talked about how many people have no source of income, and the large venues such as like Elsewhere, and I forget exactly who else they specified, but these places that obviously rely on large groups of people and are shut down by law, and that they describe the vulnerability of a lot of people in these environments, people who are not comfortable working a 9 to 5, people who are by choice the most vulnerable outsiders, or they don't choose to be vulnerable, but they are outsiders and naturally become vulnerable because of the way our society works. And they're hoping, but some are not as optimistic as others, that the government, the state, will come in and help them. In your opinion, do you think the state can save New York City nightlife, or is this going to be something that's going to haunt us for a few years?
I think it's not going to save the way we see it now. I hope places like Elsewhere, like you mentioned, will survive. But Elsewhere is a huge nightlife complex, and it has multiple venues within it. It's pretty successful. It has a good booking agent. The places that kind of will shed away without as much fanfare are the places that have like medium volume shows and kind of aren't as popular. Some
of the other places referenced in the Pitchfork article that I want to say it came out today. Actually, it was released yesterday. Yeah. Good Room, Nowadays, Public Records. They're all Brooklyn venues.
They're all awesome. I really love all those places. I've had some great times at all those places. And it breaks my heart a little bit. And the immediate thing I thought about was like, if you ask anybody, like, do you have, I hate this word, like, do you have empathy? Everyone would be like, I have the most. Are you kidding me? I do so many good things. I treat people well. I'm like, well, how do we help these people who need help right now? And they're like, well, it's your choice to be an artist. Like, I work for a job with a salary. I'd love to be an artist, but I have responsibilities and I don't live in the past or in my youth. I'm like, that is so cruel. And I think, we've talked about this before, but the reason I love this city so much is because of people who are in big trouble now. People who take chances and make awesome things and give us a reason to get together, to listen to their music, to listen to their band, or just like have an awesome room that has cool drinks, And I think we will never see our memory of that again.
You hit on a key point about empathy and sympathy for people in precarious positions, depending a lot on their job. Yeah. It's easy for people to say, yeah, I feel bad for the line cooks. Mm-hmm. I feel bad for them. When someone says, what about the DJs? And you're like, the DJs? What about the DJs?
Yeah.
Well, they
get
can't
a real
perform.
job.
They can't do gigs.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah. Well, why don't they go wait tables? Well, they can't do that either.
Yeah.
But a group like DJs is not going to get the same sympathy. You know, strippers. I'm not trying to be.
No, we gotta.
There are a lot of people that make this entire society work, and we can't judge people's jobs like that. Where, as we're saying, like DJs, bouncers, people who work in nightlife, burlesque dancers. I'm just literally grabbing at jobs.
Writers, bad painters, singer-songwriters. Like. This is like everything we love. And of course, you're not going to like everybody's songs they play or everybody's room or everyone's paintings. But like, we have to support this. We're just like, these are human beings, man. I don't know how to say it without sounding like Pollyannic, but like, this is our culture. And like, whether you like it or not, if your kid can make that painting or not, like, I fear they're not going to get the help they need. Or we are not going to get the help we need.
And I do think it's important to stay open-minded about not judging what someone does as to whether they deserve help or not. Because I think there is a natural inclination from everyone to say, a DJ? We got to worry about the DJs?
Yeah. Don't they just press a button and get paid?
Like they're just partying all the time. Like
it's hard to be a DJ. Yeah. It's very difficult to become a good DJ.
But it's also not even about the actual skill required. It's about it's hard to be a DJ. It's hard to have that as your livelihood.
Yeah.
And if you're able to eke out a living doing that, to have this kind of event come and upset that, that's a blow against what you've worked for likely years and years and years to stabilize yourself to be able to do this full time, to have 5 paying gigs a month that enable you to pay your rent and live your life as a regular person in New York City.
Right.
And now that's just wiped out. And people are like, well, the DJs, whatever.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of the debate between, like Bernie virtuously says he wants to wipe out student debt. And the people who have paid off their student debt have voiced their opinion being like, well, why should I be punished? Like, I worked so hard to pay off the student debt and you're just going to wipe it away for someone lazier than me? And I'm like, yep. Yes, we are, because everyone needs help. And like, you are so awesome for paying off your debt. You are so good at what you do. Congratulations. But yeah, we're going to help somebody else.
I'd rather be a DJ, so therefore they shouldn't get help.
Right.
I think I'd like to do that professionally. I'd like to be an artist. I'm not, you know.
Yeah. What if I wanted to paint?
I work at a marketing company, so I should get, some help, but not you, who chose a creative and interesting job just because, like, I'm mildly envious of the idea that you get to do that and I don't.
Yeah. I mean, not even, I agree, but not even bringing it to like creative or interesting or envious. I'm just like, do we just hate people who aren't like us? Like, is it that simple? Because I can see somebody in a microcosm of like a restaurant being like, well, I don't understand why front of the house gets the same benefits that we do. We cook the food. People talk about the food, not like who seats you. And, the paradigm is shifting with that in a restaurant world, but there's all these different ways we interpret how valuable someone's work is. And let's not to get on Andrew Yang again, but this is what his whole campaign was based on. They're like, we're valuing the wrong things.
I think we should be valuing the dignity of a human, and we should strip that away from what they do for a living.
Yeah.
Like that to me is the fundamental issue here. It's not that, well, you're a stripper and you're a DJ. Oh, but you're a lawyer, so like screw that. Everyone's a person. They all deserve health care. They all deserve to have their student debt erased. They all deserve to be taken care of in times of international global pandemic. It doesn't matter what you do.
1,000%.
Just like everyone should be fine.
Yes, illegal aliens should get money, and that's my frustration, because so many undocumented people who need help won't be able to get help because of paperwork, and
exactly.
It just
makes
help
me
everybody.
Yes. Help everybody.
Yeah,
that's what the government is for. It's for helping people. Just help everyone.
And that's why, I'm a Democrat still, because I believe the government has a role here. And I think a lot of Republicans might say, we want the government out of these things, and privatization, and the private sector should be able to handle this. I'm like, no, we are not nice enough. We need good leaders to help everybody, because as a whole, I think we could possibly be a bit nicer.
Just take care of people. That's the job of the government.
I agree.
I don't really view it as anything beyond that. And I'm not saying I'm a communist. I just mean that it should take care of people, and then you can build from there downward.
Communism is a wonderful idea if people were nice, but I think everyone has their own incentive structure. So it takes a bigger entity to make sure things are better than everyone just getting theirs, And
once you've stopped taking care of your citizens, the government becomes illegitimate in my mind. You're no longer serving the role of what a government is supposed to do.
It's very complicated.
You're now serving certain people more than others.
Oh, agreed.
I think there's a baseline of what you need to do for your citizens, and without that, you're not a viable, respectable, functional government.
Yeah. And not to sound alarmist, but time is running out. We need to do something right now. In New York City, specifically, Cuomo has to do something a second from now,
and yes, I agree, and I get that he's got priorities.
Yes, his job is not easy. Yeah,
Clubland in Bushwick is not on the top of his personal priorities, but we do need to prioritize all these elements and the people who are hurt the hardest. And what we could lose for a long time. And Cuomo and his administration need to address these kind of things, whether it's with rent freezes or just cash handouts or whatever it is.
And
A lot of these people don't have unemployment insurance. They can't apply for it because they don't work enough hours. They're not on the books as permanent employees who are now laid off.
I know. I've been talking to somebody who's setting up a grant program for people downtown, and the basic minimum of this grant process is like, just give us your name and like proof of what you do, just anything. And I'm like, oh, it's so tricky because a lot of people can't prove what they do, but they need the bare minimum. Just like, what are you? How do we help you? Because we can't just give it to one kind of person or a job structure. We can't just give it to creative people. We got to give it to people everywhere. But a lot of people can't even describe what they do. Like, it's like, oh, I write songs. I'm like, have you played? Do you have a Spotify link? Like, no, none of that. I'm like, this is so broken. Like, I don't know. Someone should just have a truck and just hand people stacks of money. I don't know what to do.
I don't know. I feel like the best people at handing out things in the back of trucks are always drug dealers, and it's always turkeys.
Xboxes, PlayStations.
So shifting to a little bit of basketball, just a little bit.
I love it. I love it.
A minor note.
Yeah.
Adam Silver has floated the possibility of playing some exhibition games, I guess in order to lift our civic spirits in this dark age, of a few teams, assuming that they would all be rigorously tested. Then they would play an exhibition game and there would not be fans there, but it'd be something that we could watch in our moments of boredom and governance beneath the flag of horniness. What do you think about this proposal of an NBA exhibition game on one team? Andre Miller, Keith Van Horn, the legends of the Sixers. Mm-hmm. Do you like this proposal?
I thought it was a great idea. I'm really into Silver as commissioner, but I thought maybe they should up the ante and just play a regular season game between two teams in a neutral area that test negative for the virus. And a lot of people are mad at the Utah Jazz and the Nets for spending all these tests when everyone needs tests, but these are very important symbolic people on earth, and I believe in symbols. And to test the NBA team, yeah, sure. NFL, anyway, politicians, get your tests. They're very important in our society, but
also the NBA teams are paying for them, and they're paying a lot of money for them.
Yeah.
And that's the reason that they're getting tested and other people aren't, is that they are coughing up money. It's not even, to my understanding, that it's like, well, we got to take care of the celebs first. It's like literally that if you have money and you're willing to spend it and you've got connections, you can get tested.
Yeah.
If you are in the medical profession and you've got symptoms,
they should probably
you still can't get tested.
Yeah, I know. It's frustrating. I get the frustration, but I also believe like when Kevin Durant gets the Rona, it captures our imagination in a distinct way, and to have tests for people we pay attention to kind of makes sense to me too. But
that could be, but I don't even think that's really what's happening. I think
sure.
It's more that like teams have medical departments and teams have connections and can say, we'll pay you X amount to expedite that process in a way that average Joe who's like coughing into a handkerchief for the last week can't do.
Frustrating, very frustrating. But
I get why people are annoyed, but I just also
sure.
don't think it's like the U.S. government is going to basketball players first. I think it's just money shit.
Yeah, shout out to Max Abelson, who wrote that Wall Street Journal article about this kind of before this all happened. But back to basketball though, I think it would be really cool to have a regular season game between two teams and have it count. I think the gravity of that would be cooler than an exhibition, and not that hard to do in my uneducated opinion.
I don't really have strong feelings either way. I think having a regular season game that counts at this point feels completely besides the point as an actual regular season game. Like if you looked at the schedule and you're like, Okay, so the game that didn't get played the other night.
Oh, I don't care about that. I just want normalcy. Like an exhibition just seems weird.
Well, I'm about to get to that, but I think it's tough to look at the schedule and say, oh, well, they canceled the game between the Jazz and the Thunder, so let's play that one. Or looking ahead in the schedule, the Clippers and the Mavs were supposed to play today, so we're going to do it. I think there are problems with saying that because who cares? We don't need this game. I do think if they made a concrete decision, or at least semi-concrete, about whether or not the season was going to continue, having some sort of tiebreaker game could be fun. Or saying, look, Portland is 1.5 games out of the 8th seed. I'm not even saying they are. I'm saying for a sake of argument, let's do a play-in between these two teams.
I feel
that
so
could be
well
kind
rested.
of fun.
Did I have a nightmare? Was I running to catch a plane through tunnels?
I have to stop mentioning the Blazers, but every time I come up with, I want to mention a totally
centrist team,
the most centrist of teams. They've got a proper amount of law enforcement agents, but I like the idea of it meaning something. But a regular season game doesn't really work either. It almost has to be a play-in, or you're acknowledging that the season is fucked, and you're saying, let's sort out the 8th seed, and we'll have the teams that are in 8th, 9th, and 10th place do a little tournament. I think something like that might be kind of fun.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like any sort, if Silver had an exhibition of even like past greats, like your boy Andre Miller, with some players, like we're gonna watch it. It's gonna be fantastic. We're gonna be really happy. But I think like what I really thirst for is like a team we recognize, like some sort of recognizability. Not just like throw us a bone, like here's some basketball, gobble gobble,
No, I'm not interested in that either. Oh, it's just the guys who've tested negative and they're gonna play some ball despite the fact they haven't been playing for the last 3 weeks. They're gonna get out there and shoot
like
some hoops.
watch
and you
each
guys
other
will
dunk.
Feel gratitude for that. I'm like, no, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
But as I was saying, a tournament between like the
cool.
8, 9, 10, and 11 teams where the winner of the tournament will get the 8th spot. And you're like, okay, Orlando, Washington, Charlotte, Chicago. You're fighting it out for the 8th spot, and along with Memphis, Portland, Pelicans, Sacramento Kings.
Yeah.
8 teams. We're going to play one game a week. Just like have it all really well sorted out so there's no fans, and we'll do it on a beach. We'll do it in front of at the Rucker Park. We'll do it in interesting locations. We'll put it on TV. And this is actually how we're going to determine the 8th seed.
I love it. And I think it would really give us the needed distraction.
And it would give us 6 games.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, obviously, your plan is flawed because the team should be the Knicks, the Hawks, and the Warriors, seeing who can lose the most games in a short period of time.
Let's do this.
No, but I'm with you.
It looks as if the Knicks have gone 0-3. They will be receiving the first pick in the draft.
Can you imagine, though, if Silver announced that in the West, I don't know offhand, but the Grizzlies, the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th seed all tested negative, and we're going to do a mini round-robin tournament? I would lose my mind. I might cry from joy. That was what I was looking at.
It would be Memphis, Portland, Pelicans, Kings. I'm like, I'm like, 3 of those teams are watchable.
I would lose my mind. I don't know if I could control myself. I would just be overcome with joy, man. Like, it would just be the coolest thing to see. Like, we're going to give you guys exactly what you want.
And what also would be fun about it is that we're like, every one of these games is single elimination.
Oh, I like the March Madness. The NBA should do March Madness.
Round 1 is going to be Memphis against the Kings.
Yeah, 3 days.
You're going to play.
Yeah.
The team who loses is out.
Yeah. It could be like 3 games in, a bunch of games, but 3 days of games in 5 days,
Yeah, I think you just spread it out, right? So you can get 3 weeks of basketball. It's like 2 games of the week. Or you do it on one night and you have 2 games, one West Coast, one East Coast. You just try to make a little thing about it for people to look forward to. That's what I would do. I would do Bottom 8 teams fighting for the 8th seed in each bracket.
Yeah. I mean, lengthening it makes me nervous a little bit, but this virus is predictable, and I think at the very worst we could see a really bad arc, but I think that arc is predictable. So the NBA and everyone else would just have to figure that out.
Well, every team would only need to win 2 games to get that 8th spot. You'd win the first one, and then you'd win your second one, and you're in. Yeah. So you could do it in a week if you felt like it.
What if they abbreviated the games? What if it was like 3-on-3, best of 21, winner of 5?
I'd be fine with that too.
That'd be kind of amazing, man.
I would get that a team like Memphis is like, wait. We're in the 8th spot. Season's over. We're in the playoffs.
Exactly.
We're playing the Lakers. And you're like, you know what? No, you're playing the Sacramento Kings.
Yeah. I know. I think the Players Union might shoot all of this down. But as a fan, I think it would be amazing.
I'm deeply uninterested in an exhibition game, though.
Yeah.
I would probably watch it. I'm not a horrible human. I'll watch basketball players who I like because it's a fun sport, but they're not going to be in great shape.
Yeah.
They're not going to be playing hard. They're still going to be a little bit leery about the guys out there having the virus.
Is Ice Cube planning to go forward with the season?
I don't think anyone's going forward with anything. Except Japan's trying to do the Olympics. They still want to do the Olympics.
There's so much money tied into that. I don't blame them for constantly hedging. It doesn't look good, but I don't blame them for saying, like, can we just like wait as long as possible because we're so screwed if we cancel this. Like
the conspiracy theorists are saying that Japan is wildly undercounting their numbers because they don't want to cancel it yet.
Same with China because they don't want global pushback. Apparently there's satellite footage of people still lining up for hospitals, and they're like, we are totally at 0.
Man, this is some wild shit.
It's wild for many reasons, and I think a reason is the way humans are reacting, and I don't know what to do, man. Like, everything seems nefarious and everything doesn't. I'm not sure.
As someone who does not care about the Olympics, from an entertainment standpoint, I don't mind it being canceled. It doesn't really matter to me. I do think for all those athletes, it's obviously horrific, especially the way that you have to train to get to that level for this one window of opportunity. But you can't have an Olympic Village in this situation.
No,
you just can't do it. It's not even the physical. It's not even like, oh, you're going to wrestle against somebody. Yeah. There's that. Or you're playing basketball against someone. But it's just having that many people from that many nations in one place is like a logistical like hellscape in this environment.
They cannot do it. I believe the scientists who say that this is going to last maybe 18 to 20 months and there's going to be like spikes. That's logical to me. That sounds like the most honest prediction. It'll go down and it might go up a little and it'll go down, and we're gonna live with this for a while until these scientists get some sort of progress.
Is this the boomers' final gift to us?
No, you wish. We thought it was Trump.
They won't stop.
They won't stop.
They're a lot like Diddy. They can't stop. They won't stop. But look at what the boomers did. They ruined the planet as far as the ecology. They created a vicious form of capitalism which debased huge populations of the world's citizenry.
The wealth gap is appalling.
And that's on the boomers. Well, it's 100% on the boomers.
Sure.
Gen X is about tranquility, corduroys, watching Clerks. Not our fault. We didn't do this. And then the boomers put Trump in and have ushered in Brexit and like nationalism around the globe. Then, to cap it all off, we have to stop going to bars and restaurants and clubs and living our lives the way we want to save the boomers, to make sure the boomers are okay. This is the final fuck you from the boomers. You guys can't go to bars and clubs that we don't go to. You can't go to restaurants because we don't care about restaurants. Ugh.
I didn't mean to wake up and
goddamn
cape for
boomers.
boomers, but I woke up and the news today was young people are getting the Rona in
Yeah, you know
massive
who put
numbers.
that story out there? The boomers.
Right. Just like plant that seed.
Just
that boomer
final,
seed.
The final screw you from the boomers. The silent generation is the one who took us to the moon. Boomers, what do they do?
There was
Vietnam.
I was checking out some James Harden slander this morning, and a lot of maybe Zoomers and millennials are not with it. I think Gen X tranquil people know that he's maybe a top offensive player of all time, and we should be grateful to watch him play in his prime currently. But the slander is out there, and it made me think, like, when these millennials and Zoomers have to argue with even younger people about Zion the Third and being like, oh, Zion the Third would have cooked Harden. These millennials are going to be like, nah, Harden was the best. It's like, what about Kobe? It's like, well, I wasn't around when Kobe happened, so like I don't know about that, but no one's beaten Harden.
Well, right. Everyone ultimately ends up being like the keeper of their own
story,
sort of memories, their own story.
And
right, we're looking at like the most transgressive, subversive players like Harden that are reviled by traditionalists. And someday the traditional will be like, this guy is no James Harden.
Yeah.
That guy could draw fouls like no one's business.
And the millennials are traditionalists in droves, and Zoomers too. They still are having their strings pulled by leprechauns up in the Northeast.
I got triggered on Twitter.
What? You got go on.
I did. Me. I can't believe it happened, but it did. I was triggered. I was scrolling innocently through a Twitter feed, and I saw a clip of Andre Miller highlights with the caption, underrated floor general.
With a fire emoji.
And this is where we're at without basketball. We're singing the praises of Andre fucking Miller.
He's the
Are you
boomer's
kidding me?
It's a boomer's paradise, Ben.
Coolio voice.
Orchestral
Andre
music.
Miller sucked. He sucked. He was a terrible basketball player. He was awful to watch. Ugh.
He had that dribble bias, though.
He was so boring. Boring.
Dribble bias, though. He had a handle, so people like, who is this who played 20 years in the league? I'm like, oh, you guys are just re-signing this guy because he can dribble. This is some Luke Ridnour stuff, right?
Andre Miller, in his first season with the Sixers, after being traded for the god Allen Iverson, and
the logo.
Let's be honest, this is a reason that I hate Andre Miller. Like, obviously, this is the reason I hate Andre Miller, was that the Sixers were forced to take on Andre Miller to make the money match in that deal. And Andre Miller was a bad contract. And the Sixers then said, let's build around Andre Miller. So he became like the focal point of the team, despite the fact that the Nuggets made the Sixers take him. And they wanted to pretend it was a victory. So they ended up playing Andre Miller constantly. The only thing I can say was that in his second season, his first full year with the Philly franchise.
Good, man. I'm looking at his numbers. He's kind of...
That's what I'm saying. He was the exact worst player that you could get for a team that was like supposed to be tanking. Was like quasi-competent, super boring, chucking floor leader.
He's a centrist, but his offensive rating in the second year at age 32 in Philly was 115, and his defensive rating was 110. That's not trash. That's pretty good.
Then you look at his on-off numbers.
Yeah, I mean...
They were 7 points worse with him on the court.
Yeah.
So that's the only solace I'm taking, was that he didn't really mess up the tank because he sucked.
I mean, we don't really believe in BPM anymore after B-Ball Reference betrayed all the nerds. But as it stands now, his BPM was pretty solid in those years. It was definitely above 1. In Philly, in those 3 seasons, it was 0.1, 1.8, 2.4. He did well offensively because he rebounded a little bit, I think.
He sucked.
I mean, I understand your frustration.
Honestly, one of my least favorite players in the history of basketball.
Well, he
It
was
wasn't even that he
ethical.
was like that bad. He was just the worst kind of player for the Sixers to have and to build around in the wake of trading Allen Iverson. Leading into those years when you had incredible players drafted and the Sixers ended up getting, I mean, they got Drew Holiday, who ended up being good, but in years when they should have been tanking, Philly was playing Andre Miller.
And this is like the pendulum thing we were talking about yesterday with a certain team in the Northwest. I need you to stay with me. I don't need you to pass out.
I'm sorry. What?
Just a suggestion. But like this is the pendulum swinging because of all the whatever drama that Philly thought they went through with Iverson. Getting a beige ass player like Andre Miller is just like the most obvious thing in the world, right? And it just like absolves them from taking on any more of those media talking points that were BMM talking points. But it was such a logical shift in their point of view.
Man, Andre Miller stunk.
I mean,
That year, the Sixers started out horribly. Then they did like the kind of same thing with Porzingis, where they kind of tried to make it seem like it was Iverson wanted to be traded, and then they just quickly dished him out of town to the Nuggets. And that was the year that Philly should have been really, really tanking, and then they didn't. They tried to like do the vain fight for like the 8th seed thing.
look who's back on the tanking wagon. It's been a long, strange trip, but someone's back on Tankathon, man.
But that was the season where the Sixers ended up getting like Maurice Spates instead of being terrible and getting Westbrook or Love or Gallinari or Derrick Rose or Beasley or Mayo or Brook Lopez. Like that was a good draft. And Philly ended up winning games for no reason playing Andre Miller and a bunch of vets.
You know, I love the draft, and that's where all the cash is. All the wins are in the draft.
Anyway, I got triggered. That's all I'm saying.
That's fair. It's so funny how, to your point, on Twitter, everyone's like, "Yo, Andre Miller was kind of nice. Here's a mixtape of his highlights," and then Harden's just the worst. It's like he's not a real player. He's a fraud. I'm like, it's strange how we do things as a Twitter community.
If you see Andre Miller being praised, we're doing something wrong as a community, as a society.
Who's the next stan? Who's the next Twitter NBA stan? Like
Evan Turner.
underrated player. It's kind of nice.
Andre
Ohio
Miller,
State.
Andre Miller, Evan Turner, and
Like
Josh Richardson are probably my 3 least favorite Sixers to watch in recent history.
I love Josh Richardson. He's such a wet noodle. It's like is he more linguine than spaghetti or fettuccine? He's like kind of wobbly, wavy. He's in the wrong position, man. They don't have a guard. He shouldn't be handling the ball like that. He's a benign player.
I don't think he's a bad player. I just really dislike watching him in the role that Philly has him playing. It's actually not even his fault.
He's anti-dribble bias. He's not a beautiful player by any means.
He's totally fine. He's a useful NBA player. He just can't handle the ball or pass or dribble or take good shots.
Man.
Not a bad player.
Yeah.
None of those guys I dislike. Like Evan Turner, not a terrible player. Andre Miller, a pretty good player from what you just said. But there are certain guys that just like rub you the wrong way.
Oh,
Like,
for sure.
There's got to be some Knicks that you're like, he's not bad, but I don't enjoy watching Julius Randle and staring at him.
Bobby Portis is that guy for me currently. I'm like, no offense to Bobby Portis. He's okay. He's done well. Can you
have
get
to
off my
clarify that.
screen?
You have to clarify that. I'm not saying anything rude about Bobby Portis. This is with all respect. No offense, Bobby.
I mean, he is.
I don't want my face punched.
He is right. He is exactly who he promised to be, so I cannot be mad at him. He is as Bobby Portis-y as he promised to be. Portis said, but I just want him off my TV. I'm like, can he just not be in any games ever again? Like, I'm not even that mad at Taj Gibson, Julius Randle. I stare at Randles all day long. It's just Bobby Portis for some reason is the redundancy to me, and I find him to be unwatchable.
And this is a very personal thing because I remember how reviled like Isaiah Cannon was by some Sixers fans. Oh, they just hated watching him. Like, I like watching him. He's annoying. they're asking him to do more than he's capable of. But I like watching Isaiah Cannon. I'm gonna relent on talking shit about Jahlil Okafor. He also goes into this canon of my least enjoyable watches.
When he went off for a couple games, I forget on which team, that was really enjoyable.
His post moves are cool to watch. In highlight form, he's kind of sick because it's these like slow moving, low post moves.
Yeah.
But when you watched him over the course of a game, you're like, my God, man, I have to turn this television off.
I know. And yeah, I want to be diplomatic and say, like, congrats to all these guys, but there's just some, like, I don't enjoy watching Isaiah Thomas play the second. Like, I just find him to be, like, useless a little bit because he's such a bad defender and he needs so many screens to get a shot off. I love his bravado, though. So he kind of is forgiven because he has so much swagger. But he frustrates me a little bit.
At the same time, considering the circumstances,
I'll take anything.
if someone said, hey, if you tune in right now, you can see a Sixers All-Star team made up of Jahlil Okafor, Josh Richardson, Evan Turner, and Andre Miller. I'd be
Let's go.
$10 pay-per-view.
Can you imagine? And of course, I got to get wistful, but like the first game back with a full packed house and that tip off, I cannot imagine. And it's only been like a week and a half. I cannot fathom the feeling that that's going to have. Like when the tribute they did for Kobe, when we first saw that, when they held the ball for 24 seconds, that was crazy. I just felt like that the gravity of that moment was so big. And I can't imagine when we get a clean tip off with everyone in the stands. It's going to be an awesome moment, and I hope we get there.
Well, just imagine in general what the festive, I mean, it might be scaled back so slowly that we never get like the festive night where it's like, it's over.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
exactly.
our, like, you know,
there's no an Olympic opening ceremony.
Exactly. Our victory day. We're like, we did it. We beat the China virus. And we like rush out into the street with our Chinese fireworks.
Hey, we invented guns. So like Republicans should chill because their right to bear the things that we created is a big part of their lives.
We'll just be walking through the streets of Dime Square and it'll just kind of be an ambient cloud of cocaine.
Shout out to Dime Square, man. Something like is so easily mocked and so it's a big part of my life and our lives, but it might not exist anymore.
I don't know about that. I think.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
Yes. Yes.
Come on, Cuomo. Let's do this.
Fix Times Square.
Cuomo, we need you, man.
Cuomo needs to be the king of Dime Square.
He needs to reign over Dime Square. He needs to want it more, man.
Cookies.
Cookies.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.